Okay, here we are taking a look at Biology Standard 1.2, which is about organic molecules. So in this standard, we are going to describe the basic molecular structure and the primary functions of the four groups of organic molecules. Those are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So what you're going to be looking at is you're going to be able to describe what the term organic actually means, and it's not what you think it does. You're going to be able to identify the different organic molecules by their structure as well as by their function. So lots of vocabulary that is within this part that you're going to need to know, and you're going to need to be able to put them with the correct terms as you go through. So let's start with what organic actually is. When we talk about things being organic, we do not necessarily mean all natural, going to the farm stand and getting stuff that was grown without pesticides. That is not what organic means. Organic is the study of carbon. So the term organic actually means carbon-containing molecules. So organic chemistry is where we are going to study different molecules that contain the element carbon. We are not talking about all natural foods and things grown without pesticides, and it's not what the term organic means. So as we talk about carbon, we know that carbon is the essential element for all life, and carbon can make lots of complex types of molecules, macromolecules, and so we're going to take a closer look at what those molecules are. Okay, so the organic molecules that get made by carbon are called macromolecules, and the word macro means large. So we're talking about very, very large molecules. So macromolecules are what also called polymers. So the term poly means many, and so when you take lots of something and put them together, you get a polymer. The things that were put together in a macromolecule are called monomers, and mono means one. So you take one of these things and put them together and you get a bunch of polymers. So you can think about it like a chain, links in a chain. So if you have one link, that would be the monomer. You add in more links, now you have a polymer of that same chain. So our different organic molecules will follow this monomer-polymer type of system. Three out of the four do. First are carbohydrates. The monomer of a carbohydrate is called a monosaccharide. Okay, so there's your mono. Saccharide means sugar. Put a bunch of monosaccharides together, you get a polysaccharide. Proteins also follow this. The monomer of a protein is called an amino acid, and when you put a bunch of amino acids together, you get something called a polypeptide. And nucleic acids follow this rule as well. The monomer of a nucleic acid is a nucleotide, and when you put a bunch of nucleotides together, you get a polynucleotide. Now, the way that these molecules come together is through a chemical process called dehydration synthesis. To dehydrate something means to remove water. So you're going to get rid of water. And when you get rid of water, it allows you to synthesize or put something together. So dehydration synthesis is a chemical reaction in which two molecules bond together. And what you get when the two molecules bond together is a loss of water through the process. So in here we're looking at two glucose molecules, or glucose and a fructose molecule. Those are both carbohydrates. I'll talk about them more in a minute. But to get them to bond to each other, we have to remove water right here, and now they will stick together. So here is an animation of monomer units coming together through dehydration synthesis. So here you have one monomer unit and another one coming together, and when they bond, you take water away, and that allows them to bond to each other. Again, you take water away each time. Now, if you wanted, so now you've gone from a monomer to an entire polymer. So this is a polymer. It's made up of many of these repeating units. And if you wanted to break this down, the opposite of this process is called hydrolysis, where you're going to add water back in. And as you add water back in, the bond breaks, and now you've gone from a polymer to single monomer units yet again. Okay, so going backwards on that is called hydrolysis. Hydro means water, lysis means to split. So in order to split something, this is a chemical reaction in which two monomers are going to split, and the way that we do that is we're going to put water in between the bond, and when you add that water in there, it causes these two molecules to separate from each other. And very often when you do that, anytime you break a bond, you are going to end up releasing energy. So let's take a look at how these reactions happen in carbohydrates. When we talk about carbohydrates, carbohydrate, when you hear that word, the first thing that you should think of is energy. Okay? They can be quick energy, like your sugars, or they can give you some short-term energy storage, like starches and pastas, things like that. They also can play a structural role in plants. Okay? They make up the cell walls of plants and bacteria, and they also make up the exoskeleton of insects. So these guys, they're, oops, that should be two L's. Their cell walls are made up of different kinds of carbohydrates, and insects are made up of another one, their exoskeleton. So we've already talked about this. The monomer of a carbohydrate is a monosaccharide. Remember, mono means one. And there are three types of monosaccharide: glucose, fructose, and galactose. Those are your three most simple monosaccharides. And if you look at the structure, you can see if you lay it out flat like this, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. Okay, and there's your C6. You have 12 hydrogens, and there are 6 oxygens. So the formula for glucose is C6H12O6. Now the thing about the sugar is it does not go in this linear form like this. It actually likes to make this ring form, which makes it nice and strong. And so when you break this ring apart, you can release quite a bit of energy from this molecule. And sometimes you will see the glucose written like this without all of the letters all over the place. But if you see this shape, okay, you are looking at a glucose molecule, or fructose or galactose. They all have the same basic shape. That's a monosaccharide. Now you can take two monosaccharides and put them together, and you will make something called a disaccharide, and that happens by dehydration synthesis. So remember, you take glucose plus glucose, remove this water right here, and put them together, and you get a disaccharide called maltose. And then you're also going to get water in the process. Okay. Other combinations you can make: if you put glucose and fructose together, you get sucrose, which is your basic table sugar. Also, if you put glucose and galactose together, you get lactose, and that's the sugar that is in milk. Now, you can also make larger polysaccharides by linking lots and lots of monosaccharides together. So one common form of this is starch. Starch is a polysaccharide that is composed of glucose. It is made by plants, and this can give us longer lasting energy. So in a glucose molecule, or sorry, a starch molecule, you've got glucose linked to glucose, linked to glucose, linked to glucose, and this will be hundreds and thousands of glucose molecules long. And when you need energy, you're going to break one glucose molecule off at a time and get energy in that way. Glycogen is actually a polysaccharide that we make in our bodies. It's made in our liver. So this here is the liver. And when we want to store extra energy, we actually can store it in our liver in this form called glycogen. And the last example of a polysaccharide we're going to talk about is cellulose. Cellulose is the structural polysaccharide that's found in the cell wall of plants. Okay, so the cell wall of plants is made up of this particular carbohydrate. It's composed again of lots of glucose molecules all together, linked together. Okay, but the way that the glucose molecules are put together means that animals like us cannot digest this. So in this diet, in our diets, we actually call this fiber. So whenever we're going to be taking in fiber, we're eating cellulose. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what an animal like a monkey will do when it needs glucose. So when it has extra glucose around, those glucose molecules are going to link together through dehydration synthesis, and we're going to make something called glycogen. And that glycogen is our extra storage that we would need. Okay. Now, the same thing would happen with starch, and if we want to get energy from molecules, we actually can break off these starch molecules, these glucose molecules, one at a time by adding the water in, and we will get the energy that we need.